Well, let's continue the conversation around this story, and we speak to News 24 investigative journalist Kyle Cowan about the story that he has been writing about throughout the weekend. Kyle, good morning to you, and let's start with how you learnt about this story. How did you come across it?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on. Yes, obviously the news broke on Twitter that there had been a shooting on the N1 North just after the New Road off-ramp, and very quickly we got to understand from police sources that the identity of the victim who had died at the scene was Thomas Murray, and that his father, Cloete, who was with him, had been rushed to hospital with very severe gunshot wound injuries. So that immediately set me into action, trying to just establish facts around the shooting and so on. This was on Saturday afternoon, and over the weekend we've managed to piece together just a little bit of the final movements of Thomas and Cloete Murray, and also what it appears that they were working on at the time.
Yeah, and of course it is common knowledge now that the police are investigating 2 murder cases. Do we know what their sense of it is, the motive, as what is commonly asked, as to what would have possibly triggered this?
Yes, you know, it's very easy to link this murder to the Murray's work. I mean, I think it is patently obvious that they wouldn't have been killed for any other reason other than something that they were working on. The problem that the police are going to face in this matter is that Cloete Murray and his company, Sechaba Trust, and especially Thomas in recent years, they've been working on a number of politically sensitive cases, very serious fraud and corruption matters, often for the South African Revenue Service, in trying to recover hundreds of millions of rands. The list of potential enemies is enormously long. It's going to be really difficult for police to try and do this investigation from a point of view of looking at, a specific company or a specific individual. They are going to have to follow, the traditional investigative route, which is find the people who actually pulled the trigger and then branch the investigation out from there.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier in an earlier interview, Kyle, that I have seen reports, and I've even watched an interview that Cloete Murray would have given to one of the broadcasters. I think it was Carte Blanche, and he spoke about attempts to remove him from the Bosasa case. And your thoughts around issues like that, as you say, that they have been working on very sensitive yet high-profile cases.
Yes, it's Cloete Murray famously, last year issued a summons against the ANC for 3.6 million rand, money that was paid to the political party by Bosasa in the run-up to the 2014 election. Mr. Murray did not brook any delays. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He got in, got the job done, and was fair to everybody in the process. So this is the overwhelming sense that I get. Obviously, people who have had their assets seized, their supercars taken away, and their nice houses, sold to recoup money for the state, will not always be very happy with this process. But Cloete managed to do it in a way that was always courteous, but very thorough, and, according to the letter of the law. And for News 24, the initial story that we wrote on that was published on Sunday morning, we said that high-profile political figures were in his crosshairs, and we have a good understanding of who these people are. But because there is no evidence linking anyone to the murder as yet, it would be irresponsible to name individuals and try and speculate in that sense. What we do know is that there was a file left behind in the vehicle, as I reported this morning for News 24, and that file is a strong indication of what they were working on. It's a matter involving Investec Bank and a company called I2 Infinite Innovations, and there is a very serious liquidation process underway, and assets have already been seized. So that is where I think the immediate focus will be. But it would be dangerous, I think, to be narrow-minded about this, considering the massive amounts of cases that Cloete and Thomas worked on.
Let's talk about the team that is investigating this murder, or what some people are describing as an assassination. Do we know whether it is the police's elite crime-fighting unit, the Hawks?
Yes, I do believe that members of the Hawks are involved. However, a senior manager for the NPA told News24 that they are going to institute a prosecutor-guided investigation from the very start. A senior prosecutor has been assigned to the matter, and the senior prosecutor will be responsible for overall management of the investigation, the collection of evidence, the collection of statements, and so forth. This is a very good sign. It's a sign that the NPA is taking this murder very, very seriously, these two murders very seriously, because there's a high level of concern, Toli, about the ripple effect of this. The curator and liquidation space is highly fraught. It is as you can imagine, when people who are involved in shady or potentially criminal activities have their assets seized, they're none too happy about it. And getting senior, well-experienced, competent people involved in cases like this is of the utmost importance to ensure successful prosecutions or asset recoveries down the line. If curators and liquidators are going to be murdered in cold blood, in broad daylight, then people are not going to take on these cases anymore. It's as simple as that.
And you mentioned that, and you actually remind me that today we are expecting a statement that is going to be issued by the South African Restructuring and Insolvency Practitioners Association. And I was reading a story on Business Day, and they're suggesting that this already has chilling effects among the professionals who work in that environment. So puts paid to what you have exactly said just now about curators and the work of liquidators.
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, can you imagine, Cloete Murray and his son were just gunned down. Can you imagine getting a phone call if you're a liquidator or an attorney and being asked to take over some of their matters? I think that you will rightfully and justifiably pause before, taking on those matters, because no one is sure which of these many matters he was working on is behind his murder and Thomas's murder. So it becomes a very difficult situation, bearing in mind that in the liquidation and insolvency space, getting assets seized and sold and moving with speed is of the utmost importance. You have to prevent people from dissipating these assets. Otherwise, you're left with creditors, particularly in some cases SARS, who are deeply out of pocket for some of these schemes. So it's important that people move with speed. Now that matters are going to be dragged out and people will potentially not want to get involved, it not only has an effect on the eventual prosecutions, but also on the ability of creditors in the state to recover money.
Yeah, before I let you go, Kyle, I can't not ask you about possible attempts. I'm sure as an investigative reporter, have you made any attempt to talk to the family and just to find out how they're coping with this situation? This is absolutely devastating, I would imagine.
Yes, they lost a father and a brother all in the same day, and a son. It's difficult at this stage. I have reached out to the family. Obviously, they are rightfully not speaking publicly at the moment. I do know members of the family, and hopefully we'll be able to be in touch with them quite soon. But at this stage, just giving them all the space they need and obviously trying to just establish as many facts as possible, and put these out on our platform at News24 so that the public and the family can be aware of what's going on.
Kyle Cowan, thank you very much, and best of luck on the work that you do.